All right. Number 14, Oklahoma, 5.5-point favorites against South Carolina. The over-under, we've already teased it. 894 yards traveled for Lenora Sellers. Connor, that's a very high number. Where did you get that? Cole Kubalik. We're just going to bring up all of Cole's tweets on this pod today. That's what we're going to do. He tweeted this data via Teamworks. Last week at LSU, Lenora Sellers had 19 rushing attempts for 22 yards, yet he covered 894 yards in this game.
I tried to remember that stat, and 600 felt ridiculous. And it's almost 1,000 yards. It's 900 yards. I mean, it's 1,000 yards. Imagine how tired and hurt he was after that game.
It's one of the most ridiculous stats I've ever heard and instantly believed. You know,
Your eyes told the story, right? Because again, it took 5, 6, 7 defenders, like we talked about. LSU had 5, 6, 7 defenders all night. He must have broken 20 tackles technically. Guys got hands on him. I don't know what exactly gets counted as a broken tackle. Sometimes that's a little bit murky. But guys that got hands on him, I feel like 30, 40 times. You know.
Now I'm gonna in a minute here. I'll look up the missed tackles force for Lenora Sellers in that game. I don't know if that counts how many he broke in the backfield as well. But if you watch him at this point, he's in survival mode. He's just in survival mode with teams that can get after the quarterback. And it's worth noting, by the way, Beamer fired his O-line coach. He promoted friend of the show, Sean Elliott, to be able to help with that. It just can't be worse. It's been a disaster this year. South Carolina just does not have an offensive line. And it feels very much like a couple of years ago in pre-draft Rattler where, God, you're just begging for him to take a ridiculous sack and he needs to still be Superman. They are going to need all the help in the world on that offensive front and not just home cooking, but like real actual protection because Oklahoma is coming off a week in which it heard about how much it struggled against Texas, even though, and I don't even think we brought up this stat in the recap pod, but Oklahoma had 12 TFLs against Texas. And all we were talking about was Texas offensive line found its identity. Now they only had one sack, but they were getting in the backfield. They were blowing up plays. And that is still a unit that can pressure the quarterback. Taylor Wine has really stepped up alongside R. Mason Thomas. So it's not just him. And this just cannot be, if you're South Carolina, another game in which Lenora Sellers is running for his life. It's as simple as that. He can make great plays out of those situations as well as anybody in college football. But if that is your basic offense, which it has felt like far too often, your upside's limited. It's not difficult. It's
Connor,
hard to imagine
really
them
quick
doing anything
before
but
before you hop off that. I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to share another stat with you. It's the highest pressure rate without blitzing FBS defenses in Week 7. I don't know if you saw this one.
So where's this stat from?
This is from Cam Meller, who's like one of the PFF guys, right? So
yeah.
So just to give you a range, right? The number 2 team had a 52% pressure rate, okay, and the number 10 team in America had a 43% pressure rate without blitzing. LSU had a 72% pressure rate on Lenora Sellers without blitzing last week. Says a lot about LSU for sure. Says a lot about that offensive line, especially with Oklahoma, who has a front about as good as LSU's. Oof.
I'm sure that Shane Beamer, he could just pull up that tweet and say, look, you're fired. And here's why.
That's it.
I hate to say it, but this is pretty damning at this point. And well, you're right. Because this Oklahoma defense front, it is really, really good. It's an important game for Oklahoma because I tend to think teams who lose consecutive games are cooked for the playoff. You know, it's just if you can't get up off the mat, it's really difficult, even in the expanded playoff, to be able to pull off a feat like that without necessarily, you know, especially knowing that both losses would be in conference play. If you can't win a road game against a South Carolina team that has, I would say, pretty clear and obvious weaknesses, I think even Shane Beamer would admit clear and obvious weaknesses, then you don't deserve to make the playoff. That it's as simple as that. First SEC road game of the year for Oklahoma. First SEC road game of John Mateer's career. How healthy does he look? The 4-fingered quarterback, 4.5. Dylan Stewart can make this feel like Texas all over again. He can. OU has to be able to run the football, and not just with Mateer. Not just with him making plays when things break down or even just the design runs for him. Venables was asked about the mysterious lack of Jade Knott touches in the first half of the season. And he basically turned it into an answer about how much he loves Torrey Blaylock, the freshman running back.
Next
We've
question,
mentioned him a lot.
Why? What have you seen out of this run game that makes you love anyone? I'd be in this situationship with everyone if that were my run game.
I think he's looked best. I think he's looked best of the backfield options. Now, again, when we've seen so little of Jaden Ott, that's really hard to say. So I don't even feel good saying that. But if what they're seeing in practice tells you one story, then we sort of just have to default to that a little bit too much. They need to rely on Torrey Blaylock more. They just do. Even if it's not yielding chunk plays, you have to be willing to attack this South Carolina defense that way, because we've seen them struggle against the run. And we just saw last week with Texas, even if you're getting these negative plays in the first half, or you feel like, man, you really can't do anything in the ground game, sometimes you break that one big one and then all of a sudden it opens up everything else. And Oklahoma has not been willing to do that this year. And I think it's what's kind of limited their offense at times, which has had great moments, but so many of them have been because of the arm or the legs of John Mateer. They need those non-Mateer moments in this game from an offensive standpoint to feel good moving forward, and to do so against this South Carolina defense in what should be a hostile atmosphere. Well, I think OU bounces back on the road. I won't take them to cover, but I will take them to win a 24-20 game.
I think this game actually comes at a perfect time for both of these teams because their strengths and weaknesses can be seen as similar, right? Obviously, Oklahoma is a better team. I'm not saying it like that, but they're both teams that have really needed their quarterback in the run game. They've been unable to get their running backs going. And while the South Carolina's defense has not been as advertised in the way that Oklahoma has, talking about Dylan Stewart is like definitely a hump to overcome. So I think both teams will get a good rep out of this game and a win. I think they'll both be able to kind of look at themselves and say, hey, we learned something today. I think it's a dream for South Carolina that this game is at home, right? And so I think that being said, because if this was at Oklahoma, I mean, it would probably be rough, right? But I think that
But it wasn't last year. South Carolina dominated this game last year, albeit with a very, very different Oklahoma offense. And it was a game that basically gutted Oklahoma. It was the final straw for Oklahoma's offensive staff. And it was like, oh my God, how are we down 21-0 before we've even sat in our seats?
Well, and actually, that's a great point to bring up here because that brought in, them taking a chance on Mateer and Arbuckle, who, again, haven't looked great. There have been some flashes, but it hasn't been consistent. So this is a really good litmus test for, unfortunately, right, people think this way. The logos are the same, so the teams might be completely different, but you might think, hey, we hired all these guys for what? So I think this would be a chance for Arbuckle to feel comfortable against a South Carolina defense that isn't what is advertised. And like I said, I just think this is a dream. Look, both of these teams can look at their schedule and go, okay, thank goodness this team can't ground and pound us the way that, Texas did, or even like LSU did last week, right? Where it's like, we are going to be able to play our game. This team doesn't inherently take away anything we do. I think that Sellers, at least, I mean, he's got to go into coach's office and be like, brother, I mean, can we get some option looks? Can we get some something that's not me? So yeah, but again, from both sides, you have Armason Thomas, you have Dylan Stewart. So I think it's like a little. These teams aren't exactly elite, right? We saw it last week with Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma still could be, but I say that to say I still like Oklahoma. I think this will be a tougher game than people expect, but I think that. Again, I'm not trying to give away whatever, like pats on the back or whatever. I think South Carolina has a chance here. I'm not going to be disappointed if they lose this game, but I think that with the talent they have and with the weaknesses Oklahoma showed last week, a good defensive game plan, which we haven't really seen this year from them, could limit Oklahoma enough for a win. And I think it's very possible for South Carolina.
I was laughing before because I looked up the Lenore Sellers missed tackles force numbers on PFF.
Oh gosh.
And just take and I'll give you a little bit of context.
Okay.
Here. So last year against Clemson, he had 15 in that game, and it was, oh my God, I can't believe a quarterback had 15 missed. There are running backs, plenty of running backs in the SEC that have not forced 15 missed tackles. I don't think Caden Durham has forced 15 missed tackles on the year, and Lenore Sellers did that in one game as a quarterback, which is just insane.
I'll be safe and say 20.
No, okay, 20 is that's
too much.
20 is much.
Okay,
that 20 is too much.
So then let's go with 15 again.
12.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't know what point it becomes a tackle attempt, because I could tell you, there were 4, 5, 6 guys who had an angle on him and he just put a move on him and they didn't even get there. So audibly I could count 30 guys that could have and should have tackled him. So yeah, I mean, 12 as a statistical, this guy was wrapping you up and you got out of it for a quarterback is nuts.
Yeah. I can't imagine watching that defensive film last week and seeing some of the angles that these guys took, where they probably 98% of the time in their careers, if they have taken that angle or have had that type of advantage in the backfield, they have at least forced a sack, half a sack, something, and instead watched a quarterback escape out of it and either throw it away or gain 2 yards somehow. Like Lenore Sellers' 2-yard gains are some of the best in the history of college football. They just
it's very
They're
possible
unreal.
that Blake Baker had like a screaming session at this game. Now that I think about it, even though they limited that offense, because to your point, like a lot of guys, like these are like all SEC caliber linebackers that are quote unquote missing tackles. It just goes to show, like, again, how deep LSU was and how lost South Carolina's offense was, because you just can't. Again, Oklahoma has just as talented guys. You just can't bank on that happening.
Yeah, and Arch made some really nice throws on the move last week when Oklahoma wasn't able to really get home, and they only ended up sacking him once. So that's got to be a huge point of emphasis in those defensive meetings this week, and knowing just how difficult of a task it is to take down Lenore Sellers, even with a single ply offensive line, if we can even call it that at this point. So
Connor, does Oklahoma get a turnover this week
against a non-Kent State team? I'm going to say yes. I
think so. It's coming. I think that could be a big part of the difference in this one too.
Yeah, definitely good. By the way, this is too good of a game to be at 12:45. This is, if I'm not mistaken, this is a 12:45 start.
It is.
On
I was
SEC
looking
Network.
at it. Yeah, it is.
That is a spot that is reserved for Tennessee hosting East Tennessee. That is not a spot reserved for. That just shows you how good this slate is this week. That game is at 12:45. I had to look at this like 3 different times. I get why they do that as part of the ESPN package. They basically want it so that you're not flipping off of their games, and so that it's not like, oh, both games are at halftime in the noon window. Just push it back to 12:45, and that way you're at least watching one of them. But too good of a game. I'll be very much locked into that one. Over under 43.5, by the way. Real low on that.
Yeah.